For NYUp.com and Syracuse.com, I am Matt Parrino, and the Buffalo Bills are getting set to host the Los Angeles Chargers this Sunday at New Era Field. So we thought, let's bring in somebody from the Chargers beat. Introducing Jeff Miller. He covers the Chargers for the Los Angeles Times. Jeff, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about this game with us.
Oh, no problem. Not a problem at all.
Awesome. So, to start off with, obviously, both the Bills and the Chargers losing in week one. The Bills took it on the chin quite a bit. We'll talk about that in a second. But for the Chargers, kind of from the outside looking in, probably a disappointing loss. I mean, at home against the Kansas City Chiefs, high-powered offense. They were able to come in there and do what they want. Just give us a little bit of a recap. What went wrong? What went wrong for the Chargers?
What went wrong was Tyreek Hill plays for the other team, which proved to be a real problem for the Chargers. They did a lot of good things. They did a lot of not good things. They had a really difficult time trying to stop Hill. They gave up a 91-yard punt return. They gave up a 58-yard touchdown reception to him. Very difficult trying to deal with him. They got behind early and never were able to catch back up. They had at least 4 drops, 2 touchdowns that in the end zone that would have been touchdowns. They were very disappointed. I think this was a game that I think they thought they were going to win. They thought they certainly had a good chance to win. They haven't beaten the Chiefs now. It's 9 games in a row that the Chiefs have beaten the Chargers, and this was one where I think they thought, they being the Chargers, that this was one they could maybe get Kansas City. They had Patrick Mahomes making only his second NFL start. They had him at home. Granted, StubHub Center isn't exactly the home field advantage that, say, like the Bills have in Buffalo, but still, you're at home. You're in your own environment. You're in your own bed. You're waking up. You're not having to get on a plane. And so I think they felt good about their chances going in, and they just once again for the 9th straight time could not beat the Chiefs, and they just have a hard time with that team.
Mm-hmm. For the Bills on the other end, obviously made quite a bit of news. Nathan Peterman was named the starter going into the season after the Bills drafted Josh Allen, and he struggled quite a bit. It was more of the same. You think back to the Chargers game last year, as I'm sure you're familiar with. Nathan Peterman got the start in a surprise move by Sean McDermott, threw 5 interceptions in the first half and was pulled. And it was almost like this was a continuation of that. I mean, he only ended up throwing 2 interceptions, but finished with a 0.0 quarterback rating. And there's just they don't have anybody in place right now that could be the bridge quarterback to Josh Allen. So now we're left with, on a Tuesday we're filming this, Sean McDermott still hasn't made a decision about who's going to be the starting quarterback. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But against the Ravens, where did it go wrong? It went wrong everywhere. I mean, on both sides of the ball. I think that, when your offense can't get first downs and your defense is forced to stay on the field, you're going to see, you're going to see the struggles. And, when you can't make plays, and this defense last season won the Bills a lot of games because their ability to make key plays when it mattered most, get interceptions. They just didn't make those plays against the Ravens, and it just snowballed to a 47-3 loss in the opener. But let me ask you about the Chargers. Going into the season, a lot of people, had the Chargers as, their pick to come out of the AFC, and then you have a first week like this where, you kind of stumble out of the gates. What's the temperature like around, not only the organization but the fan base?
It's full-on panic among the fans, of course, but that's what happens in the NFL, right? Week to week. I think there's concern among the fans just because it's kind of one of those feelings of like, hey, we've been down this road before with this team. There's a lot of promise, there's a lot of potential, and then the season starts and there's just disappointment, and they never seem to be able to completely cash in on what the expectations were. At least that's been the recent history with the Chargers. So I think there's a feeling of that among the faithful and the people following the team. I think among the Chargers themselves, they were very. I was impressed with the way they were after that game. Granted, it's only one game, but if there was a team that was going to be real flustered because it was the Chiefs, because they lost again, because they went in thinking they could win, because they made a bunch of mistakes on their own that cost them that game, they could have easily been much more like I said, flustered, much more emotional, and much. It just kind of, I don't want to say panicking, but they could have been much more uneasy in that defeat. And afterward, they weren't at all. They were very calm, very measured, very professional. Every player I talked to seemed encouraged. Yeah, they all were supporting one another. So I think. I think among them, they know they did a lot of good things. They know they could have won that game and should have won that game. Probably if they had 2 fewer drops, if they catch those 2 touchdown passes, they probably win the game. And so I think they, as bad as it felt, and as the fact that they fell behind and never did catch back up, never had the lead, I think they walked out of there saying, hey, we can beat this team. If we play well, we can beat these guys. And the Chiefs, to their credit, the Chiefs played really well. Their offense was phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so, they executed very well. No turnovers, didn't make many mistakes, unlike the Chargers who made a ton of mistakes. So I think the players themselves I think they feel, for being 0-1 and having just lost at home, I think they feel decent, especially, frankly, going into Buffalo. I think they're looking at this as a game that they should win this game.
Mm-hmm. One, big X factor for the Chargers in most games that they play is Joey Bosa. He missed last week. It doesn't look like he's going to play this weekend. Do you have an update there? And how much will the Chargers miss him against the Bills?
They'll miss him a bunch again, no matter who they play. A guy that good and who can put pressure on a quarterback. It looks like he won't play. He is supposed to see a specialist this week. To my knowledge, that hasn't happened yet. So after that, there may be some kind of an update. No one here outside the team, at least, any of us covering the team, expects him to play. I think it would be very surprising if he's back. Certainly this week, and it could be a little while. Even head coach Anthony Lynn admitted that this could be something that lingers for a while. So there may be, I would suspect there'll be some kind of update before the game, but as of right now, we don't have anything. But Lynn made a point on Monday at his press conference. We were asking about the game last year against the Bills and the 5 interceptions, and he made a point to tell us that on 4 of those 5, Joey Bosa was in and was pressuring. So he basically was saying, I think he was letting some of the guys who will be playing Sunday, let them know that, hey, that's what happened last week, last year. This is what we're going to need you to do. So it will be a big loss. Isaac Rochelle played last week in that spot, a second-year guy. Draft pick out of Notre Dame. He was pretty good. He didn't get a lot of pressure. He didn't make any glaring mistakes, but he wasn't Joey Bosa, and that's and nobody is. I mean, there's very few Joey Bosas, as you know, in this league. So that will be, as long as Bosa's out, they're gonna miss him, and they'll miss him this week. There's no question at all about that.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, we don't know who the quarterback is when we're filming this for the Bills. Sean McDermott not wanting to tip his hand may indicate that he's going to stick with Peterman. I think the idea going into this season was that they wanted to, get through the tough part of this early schedule. Maybe not give him the looks behind this kind of rebuilt offensive line against these top defenses like the Chargers, Minnesota, Baltimore last week. So for all intents and purposes, we could be looking at Nathan Peterman again, which I think is interesting because on one hand, he played so badly last week. It's almost like, how can you go back to him? But at the same time, it kind of lines up for an interesting story from a journalist standpoint, right? I mean, there's a guy that played against the Chargers last year and struggled mightily. Has there been any talk within the, obviously you probably haven't had any chance to talk to guys yet, but from the coaching staff about what their impressions are of kind of what's going on in Buffalo with this?
I don't know. You're right in that we haven't had a chance to really talk to many guys yet, but it was. I think last year that game, it just unraveled so quickly. I don't know. I think these guys, this coaching staff in particular, they've been around long enough. They know they can't go into this game expecting that to happen again. As you said last week, the Bills, it kind of looked somewhat like that. So I think that I think they feel good. Anthony Lynn was asked Monday, how does it affect your preparation, who the quarterback is, whether it's Peterman, whether it's Allen? And he said, I don't think it makes any difference to us either way. And meaning his point was, we need to play, the way we play. We need to put pressure on whoever it is. And, so I don't think they're terribly concerned one way or the other. I think they realize, they understand they're going with the intention that whoever it is back there, they're going to have to put pressure on them. And I think they believe if they do put pressure on, either one of those guys, that they're just given Peterman's history, given the fact that Allen's so young, that they figure that if they put pressure, there's going to be mistakes that are going to happen, and there are mistakes that they fully intend to capitalize on.
Definitely. And so moving right along, we'll go into our kind of final portion of this preview show. And I just basically want to alternate here, give our keys to the game. You, obviously, for the Chargers, and I'll take the Bills. And I'll start with you. What's your number one key for the Chargers to have success in this game?
Well, I think number one is they have to catch the ball. The last week, those drops, as you know, and you watch these NFL games, mistakes like that, glaring mistakes like that, can be really crippling to a team. And they had four obvious bad drops, and like I said, two of them were touchdowns, and went right through guys' hands. And so they need to catch the ball. This is a situation where, with a couple of these guys, if it starts, they drop a pass early on Sunday, this could start to be a mental thing, and all of a sudden they all start to press a little bit. So they've got to catch the ball.
Mm-hmm. For me, I think that you have to start, fundamentally, and that is execution, right? I'm first and second down for the Bills. They need to get positive plays. There were so many plays against the Ravens where they were just, shooting themselves in the foot, losing yardage, taking bad penalties. They just have to build a little confidence early on, put themselves in manageable third down situations so that whether it be Peterman or Allen, you don't take LaShawn McCoy basically out of the game from the backfield. I mean, third and long, all day long. I mean, and it's going to lead to 3 and outs. And I think that's number one, most important. Execute, have success early. Number two for you.
I think the Chargers would be well served to get up early, get ahead in this game. Anthony Lynn Monday mentioned you don't just play the Bills, you play against that stadium full of fans. As he knows, he's been there, he's been coached there, he knows what that home field can be like. And I think based on the game last year, based on the Bills game last week, I think the Chargers are going to go into this thinking, let's get the lead early, let's get these guys down, let's not give them hope. And let's, kind of like, one of those classic examples you see a lot in basketball where you don't let a team hang around. Mm-hmm. Like the Sunday night game when the Bears kind of let the Packers hang around, and we saw what happened. So I think the Chargers are going to go into this game with the idea of, like, let's get these guys down, let's get ahead, let's put this thing away. And then, much like last year's game, last year's game was close early. Mm-hmm. It was 7-7 at one point, and then they just fell apart. And I think the Chargers are going to want to go into this and let's, especially based on what happened last year when these teams played, let's get these guys down and let's make sure they realize they have no hope.
Mm-hmm. Number two for me is, make the plays that are there to be made. You know what I mean? It sounds simple, it sounds cliche, but there's a lot of times where this defense kind of got themselves in trouble against Joe Flacco, who ended up throwing for 3 touchdowns last week, and you're going up against Phillip Rivers this week against the Chargers, where they just weren't making the plays, getting lost in coverage, Phillip Gaines giving up big chunks of yardage, Jerry Hughes just missing on a wide open sack where he had Flacco dead to rights. You can't do that against good offenses in this league, and the Chargers proved that they are one of those. A lot of high-powered weapons, and you have to make the plays. You have to force turnovers. That's part of it. But just make the easy plays. Number three for you.
The Chargers have a little bit of an issue on the offensive line. Joe Barksdale, who was a right tackle, hurt his knee last week. We haven't got an update yet on him. I don't suspect he'll play this week. We don't know the severity of it. It could be a long-term thing. It could be a week-to-week thing, but they have a guy named Sam Tibby who played last week. By all accounts, acquitted himself well. Again, no glaring mistakes. I'm not going to pretend like I know a whole lot to the ins and outs on the offensive line, but I think a factor for this team is going to be they're going to have to run. They're going to have to run the ball. They've got in Melvin Gordon, they have an excellent running back, and Austin Eckler is a sort of change of pace guy. They were able to run some last week, which really opened up things. I think if they can run, that offensive line can continue to gel and can make the run a threat, then this team does have a lot of weapons. And I think when they can run the ball, they become very difficult to play defense against, because Phillip Rivers, as he grinds through another season, or 13th season, he still is very effective. He's still a big time weapon. He's got some very good receivers. Mike Williams, young guy who's coming on, and among them, Keenan Allen, everybody knows. So I think if they can run the ball, it's going to be extremely difficult for the Bills.
Definitely. And finally, for me, my third key to the game here from the Bills is, show some character. I mean, I talked to Kyle Williams in the locker room after last week, and he basically said everybody that was in that room was going to have to look themselves in the mirror and figure out what they wanted to do coming out of a game like that where they just got embarrassed in all facets of the game. And I think that, you come out here and you're going to find a lot about the character of the players on this team. It's not easy in this league. There's no doubt about that. And it's really tough when you have a few positions like the Bills do where they're kind of depleted in the talent department. But they're all NFL players. They're all here for a reason. And, for the Bills fans that, sat through that 47-3 loss last week, they're going to probably show up and sell out New Era Field this week and hope for the best. And I think that, they'd be best served to go out there and leave their best effort on the field. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. Why don't you give a little shout out? Where can people find your work this weekend for the game?
Yeah, it's you can on Twitter. It's Jeff Miller, LAT, Los Angeles Times, and then LATimes.com. You can go on to the game and anything you want to know about the Chargers and any of these updates on Bosa or Barksdale and any of this stuff, you'll find it there.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeff. And guys, for all your Buffalo Bills content, you know where to go, nyup.com and syracuse.com. We'll see you on Sunday.